Center number 4, you're going to be reading a poem called Nothing Gold Can Stay. I know the top of your paper says Center 5, but this is actually Center 4. Nothing Gold Can Stay is a poem by Robert Frost, and I thought it fit into the Gold Rush theme that we were using in this center rotation. So you'll see that you're going to do the same strategies to analyze the poem. This time you're going to be looking for some different things. So on your first read, same thing, you're going to select one color to highlight difficult vocabulary words. And we've talked about how sometimes when vocabulary is used in a different context, it might not seem to mean what you think it means. So just because it's a word that you've heard of before doesn't necessarily mean it might not be a vocabulary word here if you don't understand how it's being used. Okay? So let's do that together. It says, nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaf's a flower, but only so an hour. So leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief. So dawn goes down to day, nothing gold can stay. Okay, so one of the words that I think you should probably have highlighted is the word hue. Sorry about that. And I, of course, can't access it because of this menu bar here, so I'm going to make mine in blue, but you should highlight them. Another one that I would highlight here is subsides. I think I might know what subsides means, but I'm still going to highlight it. So Eden sank to grief. I know Eden is a name. I'm going to highlight it though because I'm not really quite sure what it means at this point. So dawn goes down to day. I know what dawn is. Nothing gold can stay, and I know what gold is. All right, so at this point I would get my dictionary out or go to dictionary.com and look up some of these words to see if I can't figure out what they mean. Then I'm going to read it again, and we're going to number the stanzas. And I'm going to tell you that in this poem there's only one big stanza. I did leave some extra room between each of the lines just so that you had some room to make some annotations, but there's only one stanza here. So really not going to take you very long to do that. This time when you read the poem, next to the different lines, I want you to highlight in a different color using the symbols, the pound sign, if you see any figurative language. And I'll tell you that there are maybe 3 or 4 different places that you should find some. If you want to get your poetry notes out to look at and refer to, that would be a good idea. You're going to put a star next to anything that's important, an exclamation point by anything that's surprising to you, and a question mark by something that you're wondering about. And I would think in a poem there are going to be some things that might not be very clear to you that you might be wondering about. I'm going to stress to you that when you're reading poetry, you really need to read it multiple times to get the full understanding. All right, so let's do that again. Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaf's a flower, but only so an hour. Well, I would put a pound sign up here because I see what looks like figurative language, a metaphor. Nature's first green is gold. So I want to stop and think about what does that mean, nature's first green. When is nature green? And why is it saying that it's gold? That's something that you'll want to answer as you go through and do your margin notes. Her hardest hue to hold. Well, once we figured out what a hue is, that might tie a little bit more to that first line. Her early leaf is a flower. Keep saying her here. That sounds like personification to me, which is another example of figurative language. Her early leaf is a flower, but only so an hour. So leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief. Eden, I looked that up, and I should have a pound sign here because that's an allusion to something from the Bible, and there's a reason why the author chose to compare it in this poem. So Eden sank to grief, so dawn goes down to day, nothing gold can stay. This idea of gold is repeated again here. It was at the very beginning, and now it's again at the end. And I think that that's going to hold some symbolism to the poem. Okay, so I've seen a lot of figurative language. Now I'm going to go back and do my final read, and this is where I'm really going to be marking this poem up. Some comments, maybe for each line, an explanation of what that line means or what I think it means. Any place that I had things I was wondering about what the author meant. Any explanation of good imagery that the author used, what the figurative language was, what type of figurative language it was, and what the comparison was. Do I see any idea of what the theme is at this point? Any elements of sound? Is there rhyme? Is there rhythm or repetition? And anything else that I notice about the author's writing. Now, if you take some good notes here, it should help you when you go to complete the back of this page. And you can use your poetry notes, but you're going to go through and answer these questions to see if you can't find some explanation ultimately of what do you think the author was trying to say about life. And I want you to see if you can really apply this maybe to your life. Okay, because I think that's what the author meant. If you finish this, you can turn it in. If you have questions, you need to make sure you ask. And then if you finish, turn it in, and you can work on your 7 Wonders research.